Commissioners will be held at this location at 6 p.m. on, what date is that, man? Make sure I get the right date, I don't tell somebody something wrong.
The first Monday is
May the 2nd,
first Monday.
May the 2nd, right here in this room. Attendance is not required at this hearing, but it is encouraged in case questions come up that I may not be able to answer. As to the order of business tonight, I will ask the zoning administrator to make a comment as to the zoning request. Then the applicant will come forward, state their name and address, and sign in and state their reasons for the request. Next, the zoning commission will be able to ask questions to clarify their understanding of the issues relating to the application. After that, I will allow public comment for or against the rezone or amendment. All comments will be addressed to the commission and not to others in attendance. No personal attacks will be allowed. The Planning and Zoning Commission is a recommending body only, consisting of concerned citizens who are appointed by the county commissioners. We are a fact-finding body that visits the property, review the information, considers public comment, and with the guidelines of the comprehensive plan and other land use ordinances, make recommendations to the Board of Commissioners. The final decision will be made on Monday, May the 2nd, right here. Is there any member of this commission that needs to recuse themselves of any application to be heard tonight? Hear none. Ms. Patrick, we are ready to begin. Would you please give us our first rezone request?
Yes, sir. The first one is Brenda Escovedo, and she is requesting to rezone her 5.9 acre property from A2 to RR to allow her to cut out 2 acres to sell to a family member to live on. The property is located at 0 Nice Commerce Road, and that's because if there's nothing on the property, you have a 0 number as an address, as a house has to be there. And it's located on map 15, parcel 143-A03 in District 1, and I do need to report an update on this one.
Okay.
Miss Brenda and I got together and she decided to combine the remaining 3.9 acres from this tract that she's cutting 2 acres off for her brother-in-law.
Mm-hmm.
And that will be, in that amount will be left after splitting off the 2 acres. So with that tract, she's wanting to just absorb it into the tract that her home is on right in front of it.
Right.
So that way we are not creating a second RR zone, it's being absorbed into her A2 zone.
Okay, all right, thank you for the update. Ms. Escobedo,
Yes, sir.
will you here? Please come forward and kind of tell us what you want, and I guess the sign-in is in the back.
It is, yes, sir.
Like, Ms. Renz here. We want, like she said, Ms. Tracy, we want to sell, 2 acres to my brother-in-law. He's here. He's, moving from Chicago, and we want to live in the same area as a family and keep working, the land that we have.
Okay. All right,
If you wanna just, go into a little bit more about us putting that lot back together, this chart, remaining 3.9 acres.
Yeah, keep it everything in my property, my house.
does anybody in the board have any questions?
I just made a comment, I noticed the sign that fell down on the ground, probably need to it's laying down, you still see it, we probably need to stand it back up so everybody can see it. The sign.
I know, you're
The sign, the sign.
The rezone
The
sign.
Yes, it's
It's right there in the corner, I noticed when I come by the other evening. It's
Oh,
laying on
okay.
the ground, it needs
yeah,
to
it
be-
was windy. I know.
Yeah, it needs to be standing up so
I will.
everybody can see
Sure,
it.
I will.
Any other questions or comments?
I think I know the answer to this from the drawing, but I'll ask anyway. The drive to access this property will come directly off of the main road. It won't take an
No.
easement or anything across the other property.
I mean, it was close.
Okay. Any additional questions?
Just to be sure, the remaining tract then will be in two.
Yes, sir.
The main tract will be absorbed into her other agency property.
And the reason I didn't, recommend this from the start is Q Public showed it being zoned as R1.
Oh,
So I had to do a little digging and, found out it was incorrect, so we were then left with the option of just combining it to A2.
very good, that saves us a lot of time.
Yes,
So
sir.
which parcel is her remaining property? Is it the small one in front? or-
It is,
Okay.
yes, sir.
All right. The one that says Patricia Swanson on this plat.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Ms. Escobedo.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna ask now if there is anybody present that wants to speak in favor of this rezone request. Is there anybody here that wants to speak in favor of this rezone request? Hearing none, is there anybody here that wants to speak in opposition to this rezone request? If not, I'll bring it back to the board, and I will entertain a motion to approve with conditions, or to deny.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve by Kenneth and a second by William. Any more discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
could
sir.
I make a suggestion?
Yes, sir.
Could I suggest that the motion be a little more specific, that it's to approve rezoning 2 acres to RR with condition that the remaining acreage be combined with the parcel in front, all to remain A2. And the reason is, one, just to be specific of what we're doing here, but the second, the condition is because actually right now, that one in front is a non-conforming A2. We don't want to create, so we need the condition that they be combined, and that will actually bring both of them into conformity.
No problem. You want to rephrase your motion?
Yeah, I'll rephrase my motion, recommend that, the adjoining 3.9 acres be adjoined with the house and other than RR. Mike said it better than I did,
You got it, didn't you?
To rezone 2 acres to RR with the condition that the remaining 3.9 acres be absorbed, how we want.
Yeah, it's actually tax parcel 0015-143-884.
Okay, second? Smith?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, I'm sorry.
We shall read, all right, Bruce?
Yes.
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 Yeah.
Yes.
Ms. Escobedo, this has been approved. You're welcome to come to the next public hearing, which we have on May 2nd. And, see what the commissioners have to say. We're recommending approval.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ms. Tracy?
Yes, sir. Okay. The next one is for Stephen Bradley. This, apologies, I put my agenda in there. Stephen and Candice Bradley are requesting to rezone their 15.94 acre property from A1 to A2 to combine .82 acres from adjoining A2 property for a suitable building site to build a home for Stephen's disabled brother. Property has unsuitable soil for a septic system. So they're essentially needing to purchase and add on this .82 acres because that is the only place that the septic system would perk for his house. And I did wanna add that his current septic system that he has with the existing house, it's a very complicated one, and so that's the only reason he's got a lot of wetland and
Right.
things like that. So that is the need for this, and, the property is located at 1025 Lim Edwards Road on map 47, parcel 73 in District 3.
Okay,
Is that 1065 or 50?
Let's see. I'm sorry, 1025.
1025. Steve or Candace Bradley, present,
Yep, yes, sir.
please come forward and let us want to know what you want us to do.
Well, like you said, I'm trying to build a house for my handicapped brother, close to wherever, right there on my property and everything, but all 59 acres I got, they don't perk. It's just where I built my house at, and I got a pump system, that's all I got. So I was gonna buy the acreage of 24 or 24 acres from my neighbor, just enough to build in my house, like a 1,500 square foot house, and it's already been tested for the septic system and everything to work up there.
Okay? Yes, ma'am?
I would like to add that that is permissible, under the accessory dwelling unit. So you can have two homes on one tract in that zone as long as you have a minimum of 10 acres, so that's why that's allowed.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Bradley?
I came out there one day and no one was home, but I looked around anyway. Can you brief us on the fact that it's already been cleared, concrete poured, the pads there, plumbing's in, how that got before the rezone?
Well, because it was a disabled person, and the house that they lived in now is, it's just been there since 1942. Every other week I'm putting money in it, and another company come along, offered to buy it, and I only got like 6 months to get him into a house. And there's no way that he can't live in a hotel because he has to be caretaken by my sister. So I was just trying to get the contract done. By the time, the contract ended, the 6 months to be out of the house.
But you did get a permit
That's correct, yes.
to
sir.
start before now.
That's correct, yes.
So what brought about the permit coming before the rezone?
I was advised by Chairman Higdon to move forward with it under the condition that if this rezone is not approved, any building that has taken place will have to be torn down and removed from the property, and Mr. Bradley agreed to that. And it is actually written on the permit as part of that. That, it's never been done like that before to my knowledge, but in this case it was.
So it was a special permit granted prior to the rezone, going through the rezone process?
Yes, sir, for the residents, so he could start building it.
Okay, but you were aware that you had to rezone it?
Yes, I was.
Any other questions?
Just real quick, the access driveway, new driveway,
No, it's the same existing driveway.
Anything else?
So the entire 15.92 acres plus the new piece,
184.
all of that will be rezoned to A2.
That's correct.
And actually, Mr. Mitchell, I had to scratch my head on that too, if I may. So the .82 is already A2, which is why we don't have to deal with it. We just rezone this one, then they're both A2, and you can cut them up and combine them as long, yeah. He can do what he needs to do.
Yes, sir.
Yep, anything else? Thank you, Mr. Radley.
Thank you.
Open the public hearing. Is there anybody here that wants to speak in favor of this rezone request? Anybody here wants to speak in favor? Not, is there anyone here that wants to speak in opposition? Anybody here wants to speak in opposition? Not, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the planning and zoning for discussion and a motion if you desire. Any comments? Not out, yes, sir.
I'll move that it be approved.
I have a motion by Bruce to approve.
Now, I say that hesitantly because the counselor's probably gonna make sure that I put more words into it.
Not on this one. Sorry. Sorry to disappoint.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Second by Lee. That this be approved. Any further discussion? If not, we'll vote. Kenneth?
Yes.
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 5-0 to approve. Mr. Bradley, this will go to the second public hearing on May the 2nd for the commissioners. We will recommend approval of 5-0 from this board to grant your request.
Thanks.
Ms. Patrick?
Yes, sir. Our next rezone is for the property owners Jimmy and Judy Bates. And they are wanting to give their neighbor, Curtis Daniel, 0.69 acres of their property to his property, which is, to just as a courtesy buffer on map 0046180 is the parcel, and it is on RR. The rezone is only for the 0.69 acre portion to allow the combination.
Okay. Jimmy and Judy Bates present.
But I ain't here, but I'm speaking for.
He's the applicant.
Okay, Mr. Daniels. Is that right, Mr. Daniels?
Yes.
You come forward and give us your explanation of what you're asking for this rezone.
We just don't fit off to the land if I wanted to make a buffer behind my house.
Mm-hmm.
I told them I'd take it. So, I come before y'all and do all this. But, I thought you said it, well, some of it's A2 already, now I thought you were gonna change it all to, if they approve it, gonna change everything to RR. I got that third of them, you know, back here, it's A2.
Okay, let me see.
That third of the track.
Mhm. I'm not showing that, let me pull that site plan. I apologize if I
It's
can
okay.
have a moment to study this.
Sure.
When you say a third of an acre, are you talking about the slice that's already been rezoned?
Yeah. See, it's A2, see, only it's A2, the rest of mine's RR. I don't know if y'all gonna leave this A, before he give me all that A2 or change it all to RR, everything.
And you were saying that we agreed to do what now?
You said y'all need to change it all
To 18?
to RR, you said change everything I got to RR.
Right, okay, yes, sir. So, let me read this again. The Bates are requesting to rezone a portion, 0.69 acres, of their 13.54 acre property from A2 to RR, to combine with adjoining RR property to give as a courtesy buffer to the neighbor, Mr. Daniels. And then I went on, the property is located at 854 Jack Sharp Road on map 46, parcel 17B in District 5. So, yeah, we're gonna combine it all as RR.
I was just telling you right now.
Well, looks like, we'll talk about discussion, but, you're talking about the 0.69 acres to be combined with the other part of it.
Yes, sir, cause he owns 2.13 acres now, and then the 0.69 is part of the A2 property that he's getting. So we will just need to rezone that A2 to RR. And reason being, I couldn't suggest A2 because it would be a non-conforming parcel. So, that was just the best bet, and there is a little bit of a side note to this. Back in June of 2021, Ms. Linda Fortson approved 0.31 acres to be combined to his property from the same gentleman, but didn't require, a rezone. She just noted that it was straightening out property lines on the plat. So we did have that to factor. So Mr. Daniel, as I say, owns 2.13 acres, and this will make him have a total of 2.82, and it would be all RR.
Okay?
Mr. Daniels, good to see you again. I think we talked to you out there visiting. In fact, you were in the neighbor's yard at the time.
Yep.
And that's the plat, the 179 on this thing, I think, that it's between you and.
I got her right now. He got another.
Yes,
Yeah.
we do need to.
I'll read the letter.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Thank you, Mr. Daniels. We'll open the public hearing. As we do, I have a letter here from a concerned citizen that has sent a letter speaking in approval of this rezone request. The Madison County Planning and Zoning Department attention Tracy Patrick, April 19th, 2022. Dear Tracy W. Patrick, my name is Rita K. Fortson. I own the adjoining property that is up for a rezoning application. I am most definitely in favor of this proposal for Mr. Curtis Daniels. Thank you so much for considering this for Mr. Daniels. Sincerely, Rita K. Fortson. Is there anybody else here that would like to speak in favor of this rezone request? Is there anybody here that would like to speak in opposition to this rezone request? If not, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the board for your comments and a motion.
Let me get this straight, what is it, 0.31 acres or 1 point, is it already, is it RR or A2?
The 0.69.
The 0.69, right, but it combined it with other, and you said it was,
Well, now, that, you talking about with what Linda did?
yeah.
Okay, that is,
A2.
A2, and that was, actually in with the 0.69, right?
Yeah, I mean, not A, that right there what I did last year, that 0.3 others, that's A2. And the rest of mine's RR. You said you're gonna change it all to RR. I guess it's just.
Well, let me, see if I understand this correctly. What Linda did, that part of it that she did not require rezone is A2.
Yes.
So we're gonna take what she did and the 0.69 and combine it and make it all RR. Take it out of A2 and make it RR.
I don't think we can do that, Mr. Chairman, because that is part of parcel 0046-180, and all that's been advertised is 0046-178.
And, you know, I just, because the site plan or the proposed plat, I think I included in your packets, just showed that is already being combined to make it the .69.
Yeah, that may or may not be something we need to do, a second rezone, maybe, you know, a county-initiated rezone just to clear up, but I don't think we can deal with it now, because that parcel hasn't been advertised. I think all we do tonight is rezone points.
.69.
Yes, sir,
But the-
0.69 acres, to RR on condition it be combined with parcel 0046-180.
Good question for the attorney. Is this non-conforming? This
That's the reason
This
for that.
point, 3 point, whatever this is, 3, is that a non-conforming piece of property at this point?
It probably, well, I don't know, I need to look into it. It may well be, which is why we would need to do a county-initiated rezone with the Mr. Daniels' permission that we clean that up, but we can't do it tonight because it wasn't advertised.
But we can give him that point, we can recommend to rezone that .69.
Yes, sir.
RR.
Yes, sir. I think so. I think that would be the best way to handle it now that we're here.
And we're just approving it to be combined with that 2.1.
Yeah, that's the condition of the approval to
Okay.
RR, that it be combined with parcel 0046-180. And we may already have a nonconformity in 180 with that .31, but we'll have to deal with that later.
Honestly, I think we do, we have to look into that.
Yeah.
Figure it out, I guess, legally. Any other comments, questions, or? Not, I will entertain a motion. I will make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Canoa Scott, second by Bruce, to approve this rezone request for Judy and Jimmy Bates for Mr. Daniels. Mr. Daniels, any other comments, questions? Not, ready to vote? I'm a yes.
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 Bruce?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Daniels is 5-0 to approve. Again, you're welcome to come to the second public hearing on May the 2nd. In fact, I would recommend that you come, because there will probably be some discussion as to, because there's a gray area in this particular one. All right, Patrick?
Okay. Our next one is one of 7 that are requesting to rezone from their property from A1 to A2 to prohibit any intensive farming practices. So, this is, like I say, the first of 7, and it's for Billy Crouch with Cajun Investments LLC, is requesting to rezone his 10-acre property from A1 to A2 to prohibit intensive farming practices on the property. The property may be used for future home sites for him or his children, or a possible investment property. The property is located at 0 Jotham Down Road and 0,000 Oaks Drive, come in there between, on map 8, parcel 17 in District 2.
All right, Mr. Crouch.
Mr. Chairman, before we start these 7,
Yes.
do you mind, and I just wanted to sort of review some legal principles that I've shared with y'all and the Board of Commissioners before, but I thought it might be helpful
Sure.
as you think about this.
Sure, it's
So this is just sort of the basics of zoning. First, Local government zoning classifications of property are presumptively valid because the local governing body is the more appropriate one to shape and control the local environment according to the best interest of the locality and its citizens. So you start with the presumption that what's on it is legal. If a property owner contends that the current zoning classification is illegal and it has to be rezoned to something else, then the burden is on the property owner to present clear and convincing evidence to rebut the presumption that it's legal. The burden, a challenging owner has the burden to show by clear and convincing evidence that the existing zoning, one, causes him or her significant detriment as it's currently zoned, so they got significant detriment. Usually meaning there's something they wanna do that they can't do under the current zoning restrictions. It might be economic development, it might just be used for their own enjoyment, but there's something that they're restricted from doing that they want to have in a different zone so they can do it. And number two, they have to show that those restrictions are not substantially related to the public health, safety, morality, and welfare. And of course, you start with again, sort of back to the presumption, the reason you have zoning in the first place is sort of a place for everything and everything in its place. We have these different categories from intensive agriculture to light agriculture combined with large residential, which is your A2, to your more suburban subdivision type development, which is your R1 and RR, and your business and commercial. So you try to keep those, all in their places. So that's the first government, sort of where you start with the government public benefit. So just to give you sort of a framework of how you think about it, is there a significant detriment to the owner now? If there is that detriment justified by the government's interests? Yes, sir.
What about future impact? When you say if it's a detriment now,
Mm-hmm.
it has to be a detriment now, not some potential?
Yeah, it can't be some there's other case law that talks about it's not a speculative harm, it has to be, something that's manifesting now.
But to make it perfectly clear, though, even with that, and I understand what you're saying there, that every property owner has the right to ask for a rezone.
They have the right to ask for a rezone, but the government has its interest on behalf of the citizens of having a zoning plan that's kept consistent, so.
If I
Sure.
expound a little bit, once again, the principle of private property, I think, is the cornerstone of our nation and democracy. And someone having the freedom to do what they want to with their land is, I think, enshrined in pretty much our system. The guidance we have on our zoning ordinances that pertain to this are the things that we need to look at. There's in section 14.2.4, of course, there's 14 things that we laid down. I'm looking at over those, and there is one that I think pertains to exactly what the council was talking to us about. And will the proposed change be a deterrent to the improvement or the development of adjacent properties in accordance with existing regulations? If this change, it would influence, I think, probably be a deterrent to some development of lands next to them in terms of intensive agriculture.
Well, and if I may, Mr. Gandy, maybe I did this too soon, but I just sort of wanted to lay out general principles. They may apply to some of these differently than they apply to others. So, when you look through this list of 14 factors, I would feel almost sure some of these 7 parcels are going to sort out differently there than others of those 7. I don't know that, but I would just say at least some of the individual 14 probably will. So I didn't want to get into the discussion of overall, I just sort of wanted to lay out that presumed constitutional detriment to the owner, benefit to the public framework for how you listen to these individual factors for each parcel.
Yes, sir, I appreciate that.
Okay.
And I was just looking at, you know, there's, where is that one that kind of makes me hesitant about some of this slew of similar requests that we've got here, is, I know the other commissioner has been up there and taken a look at it. This is one of those sorts of things where there is a community, a pattern of use up there that's pretty much established. And I think I would say that these changes would fit in what I see as already a residential sort of area. There's a lot of people living up in these houses that have relatively small tracts, and they want to obviously protect their investment. The other thing that we have to look at, will it create an isolated district? I don't think it will, because I think it's A1 and A2 all through up there. District boundaries illogically drawn in relation to existing conditions, I don't see where any of those is a problem. So I just wanted to kind of clarify on our criteria for judging these things.
Well, one thing I want to bring out to the commission, and we need to be careful about, is we're gonna take these one at a time, individually. This is not, we're not talking about all seven. We're gonna listen at each individual one and make a recommendation on each parcel. I know they're all similar, they all basically say the same thing, but on the other hand, they're all different. So, with that, Mr. Crouch, if you're finished.
I am, and I'm sorry if I confused the issues. What you said is exactly right, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Crouch? Mr. Crouch? Is anybody here representing Mr. Crouch? Okay. From what I understand, Mr. Crouch is required to be here tonight, so we cannot take this one up.
Well, he will have an opportunity to come back in 30 days and try to reapply.
Yes, he can reply, but this was dead.
No action today.
All right, next one.
All righty. All right, the next one is for Robert and Wendy Toll. They are requesting to rezone their 39.22 acre property from A1 to A2 to prohibit intensive farming practices on the property. The property is located at 750 Davis Farms Road on map 8, parcel 26 in District 2.
Okay, Robert or Wendy Toll, would you please come forward and tell us what you're asking for.
Good evening.
Sir.
Yeah, I'm Robert Toll. Wendy and I have lived at our home, 750 Davis Farms Drive, for over 20 years now. And through some recent developments, we have learned that our property is an A1 property, where we thought actually the property was an A2 property. Okay? And to that reason is while we're here, we'd like to move to A2 designation. And to the point that the attorney and then Mr. Gandy here mentioned, we believe it's consistent with the use of the land within that area. See, we're part of the Davis Farms community that's there, where you have some, land tracts, state tracts, and what have you, that are largely residential properties. There is not any intensive farming operations or anything like that. There's under, restricted covenants for that type of operations on those properties. So we believe it's consistent with not only our wishes and perhaps the future use of that property to be now zoned at A2.
All right, any questions for Mr. Paul, before,
So your intent as written here is to prohibit intensive farming practices on the property.
Yes, sir.
Are you specifically saying, are you on your property, or are you pointing toward influencing other properties around you? What,
No,
I mean, obviously you own the property, it can't be rezoned unless you ask for it. So you have a direct impact on what happens to your property. So the purpose of rezoning your property is for your property or others? I mean,
no, our property, actually. You know, as Mr. Scott references, each property owner within that Davis Farms community aligns with the consistent use of the property that the Davis Farms community was founded on, or structured under. But I can't speak for my neighbors and how they have their property designated, but, you know, through our wishes, Wendy and I, we think it's best suited for ours and future use of that property to, you know, again, reference it as an A2. Does that answer that question?
I suppose.
Okay.
I guess what I'm saying is, if it's currently zoned A1, you own the property, it's your say-so as to whether it's converted to intensive farming practices, it's your property. So whether it's A1 or A2, while you're the owner of it, you have control of it anyway. So what are you gaining by rezoning it to A2?
I think what we're looking at is, I'm Wendy.
Yes, ma'am. Lovely wife, Wendy.
sure, sure.
Is that we want to keep our community in whole, our community, the way that, you know, when we purchased the land, we looked at it as being a community, and we have some restrictions within our group there that where we live, you know, that we had to establish, you know. I know they're not county regulated, but there were some restrictions put there that that's part of why we bought it, is because we like it to just be our home, and just our home there, you know, so. And we raised our 3 children there, so.
Well, maybe I can ask a question that might clarify, I guess. It's your property, and I agree with Mr. Mitchell, that it's your property, so you can do whatever you want to with it, designated as A1. But in reality, you're also trying to protect the community and your neighbors
Absolutely,
if it was sold.
yes.
Right. That's correct.
Or even if you decided tomorrow, I'm going to do something that's A1 related, that will,
Well, specifically, there's covenants that are set out in the deeds, or deed restrictions that are set up on these properties that prohibit intensive farming operations on them. And in truth, in the harmony of our subdivision, if you will, with all the other landowners that are there, absolutely, we want to protect our adjoining landowners and the beauty and, you know, of their properties, not to impact their properties either. But, you know, I say that I can't, or we can't speak to our neighbors' deal. And the reason I said that is if I understood what you guys were saying, what you said, and then what your attorney said, that each one would be looked at individually. But yes, I mean, truthfully, it is the harmony of the area, again, future use, et cetera. It's consistent with the land use that's been there for 20-something years, and what we believe will always be the use of that property and the adjoining properties that are next to us.
any additional questions for Mr. Tall? Thank you, sir. Thank you. Okay, we're going to open the public hearing. Is there anybody in attendance tonight that would like to speak in favor of this rezone request? Is there anybody here that wants to speak in favor?
Yeah, I'd like to speak in favor.
Sure, come on up. Come on up, tell us your name.
Bob Kelly, Robert Kelly. I would like for the zoning of his property to be reflective on the community. So if I was to sell my property, whoever the potential buyer on that property would look at it and say, that matches what I want in my, what I'm getting ready to buy. So therefore, the potential purchaser wouldn't look at my property and then look at the areas, the property around it, and say, I don't want that there because it's A1. It's not being used as A1, but I don't have any control over that. So that's what I would like to have.
All right, thank you, sir. Anyone else want to speak in favor of?
Yes, Bill Morris. One of the things that I think that we would like to consider on any of these things that come in front of y'all is that part of what we're asking y'all to do is rezone these properties so they do meet the conformity of what they can be used for. I know that there's been some discussion about the future use of these properties and limiting, and overstepping our bounds as far as what the government considers a certain area to be. But the reality is that all but 2 of these tracts that are up for rezoning are deed restricted. They cannot have chicken houses on it, they cannot have hog houses on it. So there is no detriment to rezone them because they can never have any of that anyway. And so the only difference of what we're asking y'all to do is rezone these properties to a zoning that the restrictions on it have already made it be. So that's part of what we want to make sure. We're not asking you to control an area or change the zoning in a certain area, but what we are asking y'all to do is to rezone these properties so that the zoning matches what we can actually do with the properties. Because they cannot have chicken houses on now, and from now on, and they can't have poultry houses on. Poultry houses or hog houses, they're deed restricted forever, and those deed restrictions cannot be removed. I know there's been some legal talk about that, but legally, once you buy a piece of property and it's deed restricted, it is virtually impossible to have those restrictions removed. So I just want to make sure that's something y'all consider on all of them.
All right. Anyone else wants to speak in favor of? Is anyone here wants to speak in opposition to? Anyone wants to speak in opposition to? If not, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to the board. One comment before we enter discussion. I understand deed restrictions, but what we have been told, legally we cannot enforce. We don't have anything to do with deed restrictions.
You're absolutely right, but it does have some deterrence on what that property can be used for from now on.
Understand, we hear you, but I
Okay.
just want you to understand that as far as our decision making here, we cannot consider a deed restriction.
I understand.
Okay? Now, comments or discussion from the board before we entertain a motion?
I'd like to go back to Mike's comments. Can you just, I guess when I came in after looking at everything, my attitude was, what does it hurt? A1, A2, intensive farming versus a more moderate farming situation. But based on what you have said, it's kind of got me thinking otherwise, and I'm not,
Well, I don't mean to influence the decision, but I was just throwing out, and I don't know the answer to this, but whether this is one of those parts of the county or not. But under the any zoning plan in the agricultural county, there are going to be parts of the county that are set aside for large-scale farming operations. And all the tracts there are going to be, going to be zoned similarly, so that you don't have people coming in, cut it up in 5-acre tracts, houses suddenly surrounded by chicken houses, and then you have this, thing that we see all over the country when that happens. So that's all I was saying is, is this an area that the county has designated by zoning and by its future land use map to be intensive agriculture? If it is, then that's the county interest to be weighed against the detriment, if any, to the current owners. If not, then that's not the county's interest, and that, you know, that's for y'all to judge, looking at the map and plan.
And that leads me right into, I guess, a comment that I had already written down and I wanted to make, that we can look at it, the land use map set up as it is today, but we all know that there's a future, new comprehensive plan coming down the pike, which is gonna cause some revisions to ordinances, and will certainly cause a revision to our future land use map. So the fact is, we don't know what's going to happen in the future, how the county's gonna be set up, anything like that. So whatever the intent is now with the applicant's rezoning, a year from now, we don't know, or when the new system is set up.
Yes, that's good.
My comment on this thing is that we know that there's a new land use plan coming. We know there's gonna be vastly different. But we can't determine anything on the unknown. So what we've got to do is we've got to take what is in place right now and make our decision based on what is in place now. And a year from now, 2 years from now, whatever, that's all we can do. Because we cannot anticipate the future. Now, listening it or have visited this area, looked at all the housing and all the stuff that's over there in that particular area, these folks will put a lot in the community. And I understand because all of them came in here at one time and we got 7 requests and all this kind of stuff, and it may seem like that, you know, it's a forced issue. But again, we're taking them one at a time. And I see that that community is not conducive to a A1. That I'm leaning toward A2. So,
Bruce, if I can, Mr. Chairman, clarify for us, the deed restrictions are to be, it's nowhere in here. So
we
that-
can't
even,
even consider it.
okay, not, other than the fact that
It's there. That's all we say.
that same deed restriction is shared by 7 of the applicants, is that correct?
I would think all of them have deed restrictions. I do not know, because I don't know about the deed restrictions. I don't know how many of them have deed restrictions, but the one that we're considering now does have a deed restriction, but we can't consider it
Yes.
in our decision.
Yes.
Okay?
Mike, could you add some clarity to that, because we've had conflicting information
Yeah.
on these there's deed restrictions. I hate that somebody was sold a piece of property with something implied that can't be enforced, but where are we in this?
So the general guideline of zoning as a legal matter is, number one, of course, the county, a government doesn't have standing to enforce them. That's between the owners that are covered by them. But beyond that, it's discouraged to look at them because they're so complex legally, if for no other reason. Whether a deed restriction is valid, whether it's expired, is it a covenant that's expired? You know, the county does not do title searches and get title opinions on every piece of property that comes before it for a rezone. So those are title issues that would just be beyond the capacity of any government to try to determine on every piece of property. So deed restrictions, covenants, if they exist, those are between the private property owners.
Any other discussion from the board on the toll property?
Mr. Scott, May I share one other thing, please, clarification from my perspective? on
Yes,
this
if
one?
you just wanna clarify something, that
Yes, I would.
public hearing is closed, but I'll listen to you. Go
I
ahead.
appreciate that. You know, as I began and when I first, addressed the board here, I shared that we have come to understand that our property is zoned A1 when we anticipated or understood that it was actually an A2 property. We bought the property, as I mentioned, about 20-something years ago. And the whole idea when we bought that property was under the understanding that these restrictions were there, that we would be able to build our dream home, frankly, on the property and have that type of community around us, if you will, okay? And through this process that we've seen, we realized that being an A1, that doesn't afford that, so that's where we come to with that. So I just wanted to let you know, again, or just reassert that that was our understanding from years ago of what the intention of this community was created under.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson.
Thank you.
All right,
Mike, let me ask this one question. Mike, would it be wise to, as we vote on this, to look at it in the way, in a light that we're looking at that individual property, how it is currently being used, and is the proposed A2 designation consistent with how the current owner wants to use that property, and not how it might influence the rezoning of other properties, specifically the large tract that we all know why we've got all these at the table, but just to consider that one piece of property, how it's currently being used, and everything else irrelevant. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. Let me start a little bit back from that and then come to it. So all of these factors that we're looking at here in 14.2.4, Mr. Gandy pointed out, those really all go on the government interest side, I think, and trying to determine is the zoning classification we have really doing what we want to do there insofar as keeping uses in the right place. So you start with the first one, well, what is the existing land use pattern in the area? And the applicants have spoken to that. Would it create an isolated division? So on and so forth. So, I mean, you're right, there's nothing that, it doesn't sound like, at least on this one, that the applicant is seeking to do something currently that he can't do. On the other side, maybe there is or maybe there isn't a lot of government interest here. I mean, maybe there's not, maybe in the grand scheme of things, these properties are more appropriately A2 than A1. But what's unusual here, and I coming back where you are, that's kind of hard to get my head around is, typically you're just looking at one, and that's where the one that Mr. Gandy mentioned comes out. Would it be a deterrent to improvement or development of adjacent property in accordance with existing regulations? Well, the existing regulations on these adjacent properties are mostly all also A1, so going to an A2 on this one could be a detriment to those. But as the night goes on, if you keep changing each one of them to A2, maybe that's not the case anymore. It's sort of, I mean, to be honest, to shut it down to the car, you're sort of looking at, are we gonna change the whole character area of this section of the county tonight through individual rezones? And maybe that's appropriate, considering existing land uses and whatnot, maybe it's not. But you're being asked to look at a bigger issue tonight on a case-by-case basis than would normally be how it's done.
yes, sir.
And I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I know you admonished us that we're gonna take each one of these by individual, but we must recognize that there is a community out there.
Correct.
And I haven't driven down Davis Farm Road more than half a mile before I was intercepted by one of the neighbors and said, "Do you live here?" I'm sorry. So, I mean, I think this is almost one of those things where I think these people have established community up there. So I think there's something to be said for promoting that.
Okay. It's obvious that, we have got to recommend something, one way or the other. And I think that this is, the time has come that we must, do what we've been asked to do. I will open the floor for a motion to approve with conditions or to deny.
Mr. Chairman, I move that it be approved.
We have a motion by Bruce to approve. I will second. Any discussion? Any more discussion? Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
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 Okay. Mr. Ms. Toll, this recommending board is recommending approval of your rezone request. There will be a second public hearing on May the 2nd. I would strongly recommend that you do attend. It's your choice, you don't have to, but I would strongly recommend that you do. All right. Patrick.
Okay, yes, sir. Our next rezone request is from Robert and Donna Kelly. They are requesting to rezone their 29.59 acre property from A1 to A2 to prohibit intensive farming practices on the property. The property is located at 433 Thousand Oaks Drive on map 8, parcel 22 in District 2.
All right, Robert, Donna Kelly, either one of you here,
Yes.
please come forward and tell us about your property.
Well, it's different than everybody else's. No, I'm just paid him good money to go first. Realistically, I want the zoning of my property to reflect both the current use of that property and the intended use of that property. The intended use of that property when it was sold to me was to do what I'm doing with it. To have a single home dwelling on it, have some farm animals, hobbies, if you will, and to do the things, and be limited to the things under the A2 definition, I'll call it, for lack of words. So I would like for it to reflect that. I'll also say, because it's no secret, Mr. Mitchell, you pointed it out, that we're all here for the big tract of property. Well, the big tract of property is A2, currently A2. My property should align with that, and should reflect that. And you know, I don't have any say-so on my neighbor's property, but theirs should reflect the usage as well. Real important when we start looking at this comprehensive land use program that we're entering into, that the county has a proper view of the way this piece of property is being used currently, and the way it was intended to be used. So that's why I would like to change the zoning from A1 to A2.
All right, sir. Any questions from the board? Thanks, sir.
So, thank y'all.
Anyone here wants to speak in favor of this rezone request? Come forward, please. and give your name.
Dave Robbins, 1,000 Woods Drive. Bob's my neighbor and I'm a total supporter. A1, A2.
Thanks, sir. Anyone else in favor of? Anyone else in favor of? Anyone here that wants to speak in opposition to? Anyone here wants to speak in opposition to? If not, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to the board for discussion and eventually to a motion. Any discussion? Any? Well, I see that this particular one, based on my visiting the property, is just like the one that we just finished with, and I see that that particular neighborhood, I will be in favor of changing it to A2. So if there's no other discussion, I'll open the floor for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve.
We have a motion to approve by Bruce, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, a second with Smith, any discussion? Ready to vote? Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Bruce?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
5-0 to approve. Again, second public hearing will be May the 2nd, and I do suggest that you please attend. Okay, Ms. Patrick.
Okay, our next rezone request is by Randy and Cindy Peffel. They are requesting to rezone their 21.17 acre property from A1 to A2 to prohibit intensive farming practices on the property. The property is located at 545 Thousand Oaks Drive on Map 8, parcel 23 in District 2.
Okay, Randy, Cindy, please come forward. What's your name and what you,
I'm
wanted
Cindy
us to do?
Pepple, this is my husband Randy Pepple, and we live at 545 Thousand Oaks Drive in the Thousand Oaks Drive subdivision, where we have 5 families that have homes down through there. Half of the Thousand Oaks going in on the the right side is already A2. We would like to have ours done from A1 to A2 to be compatible with our neighbors that already exist there. And also, for the reason that we bought our land 20 years ago, to be, it was in our covenants also to not have the farming, the big farming, industrial farming there. And we also want to be compatible with the small antenna farms in our area. We are a very close neighborhood, these 5 families. As y'all were talking before, if someone comes down our road, who is this? Who, you know, what you down here for? What's the reason you're here for? We have our own little community that watches out for each other in their small farms. Our cows get out, we help each other. Horses get out, we help each other. We are so close, tight-knit families in farm areas that we want to be under the A2 like it should be for surrounding area that we live in, the reason we asked, or the reason we, bought the land to be there. 20 years ago, we raised our children there, and that's what, the intent of the farm is to be. In future use, we'd like it to stay, once we're gone, and our children take over, to be A2 for no intense farming on that area.
all right. Any questions from the board?
Not that it has any bearing on what we're doing here, but I'm just noticing on your application, it's got driveway easement. Is that
Body
actually an
pile
easement or is that
and
county road?
that's easement, the way the plat is out, if you have a copy of the plat, we go into the bottom, into a cul-de-sac, and Bobby Kyle's property and ours both have an easement, and we both use the same driveway but fork off to go into each other's yards.
Yeah, I think the cul-de-sac didn't go in far enough, if I understood it.
Yeah, when they developed it, they stopped too short, and we didn't realize it till after we bought the property and they brought it to our attention.
But Thousand Oaks Drive is a county road.
Yes. No, it's a private, it's a private road.
Private drive.
It's a private drive.
Right.
Mhm, private.
And you're only talking about 21.17
Yes, sir,
acres, is that right?
yes, sir, that's what we own down there.
Any other questions?
I'm sorry, man, you mentioned it was subdivision, has it never been called a subdivision?
No, I consider it a subdivision because that's what I lived in all my life, but this is like many farms. But to me, it's like a subdivision family because we're all so close down there. We go down to the cul-de-sac on a lot of occasions, Fourth of July and all, we gather, all of us bring dishes and everything and have cookouts or whatever down there. We are very close-knit. I call it subdivision, just, it's a dead-end road and the whole road knows each other. We're like family, we all grew there 20 years together. So it's just like a family home, big lot, if you want to put them all together.
You're a community. You're a community.
Community, big community, you know, just, we love each other, we tell each other we love each other. So I mean, that's how close we are down there.
The reason Mr. Gandy brought that up is that we deal with subdivision all the time, and that's a different animal, so.
I'm sorry I
So-
said that, but that's how I was brought up
I
in
understand
City
why,
life.
I understand why you said it, but it's a community.
a community, yes, sir. Thousand Oaks community.
All right, anyone else, okay, thank you very much. Anyone want to speak, in favor of this rezone request?
I'm in favor of it.
Anyone wants to speak in opposition? Anyone want to speak in opposition? If not, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the board for any comments, discussion. It would happen. It would happen.
You set the rules.
I know it. Sorry about that, folks. I do apologize. Any comments, questions? Do I get a motion?
I make a motion to approve.
Motion by Kenneth to approve. I get a second.
Yes, sir, second.
Second by Bruce. Any further discussion? If not, we're ready to vote. Bruce?
Yes.
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 5-0 to approve. This will be, again, discussed in another public hearing on May the 2nd. Please be there. You don't have to be, but I highly recommend that you do. All right, Tracy?
Okay, our next rezone application is for David Robbins. He is requesting to rezone his 10.53 acre property from A1 to A2 to prohibit intensive farming practices on the property. The property is located at 176 Thousand Oaks Drive on Route 8, parcel 20 in District 2.
Okay, Mr. Robbins?
Yes, sir. What all these said.
Okay.
I got the smallest tract, and it just makes sense to put it in A2 instead of A1.
Any questions for Mr. Robbins? Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Trying to speed it.
Again, anyone wants to speak in favor of?
For obvious reasons.
Anyone wants to speak in opposition? If not, we'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the board for, a vote. Okay, floor is open for, I recommend approval. I get a second.
I'll say.
Second by, Mr. Mitchell. Any questions? Any discussion? If not, we're ready to vote. Kenneth?
Yes.
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 5-0 to approve. Just a comment on this one. I also see this as appropriate because of the size. You know, A1 for intensive farming, 10 acres is not a whole lot.
Correct.
You know, so I just, that's one thing that kind of stood out to me on this one, that it is a small tract. And it sounds to me that it was, wrong to begin with. Okay, Joyce?
All right, our next one is for Billy Norris. He is requesting to rezone his 3 contiguous tracts of land from A1 to A2 to prohibit intensive farming practices on the properties. These properties are located at 0 Davis Farms Road on map 21, parcels 134, that is 10.13 acres, parcel 135, which is 33.02 acres, and parcel 136, which is 29.68 acres in District 2. I do need to say that there is a 4th contiguous tract located above these, and he and his wife Priscilla Norris own all 4 parcels together. However, the 4th tract is listed in Priscilla's name, and a separate rezone application has been submitted for it as well, and it's for the same purpose, so we'll have that one as the next one. But
Okay.
so there's basically lined up on top of each other.
All right, and this is 3 different tracks all in one,
Yes, sir.
okay? 3 parcels. Mr. Norris,
Yes, sir.
please come forward.
Yes, sir. So we have on this, this number 9 right here, that's 72 acres we have over there, which the current, what we're currently using for is a C2 type. Commercial or industrial or heavy duty farming on it, it's just cows and hay and stuff like that. So what we're asking is that y'all would rezone these 3 tracts so that the zoning will conform with what the usage is of the property.
All right, sir. Any questions, comments? All right, thanks, sir.
Thank you.
We'll open the public hearing. Anyone wants to speak in favor of this rezone request?
Yeah, I'll speak in favor of it. Mr. Norris is actually my neighbor, immediate neighbor, joining our property, and I think that would be very appropriate to have it in the same line with us, so, thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. Mr. Tolman. All right, anyone wants to speak, anyone else in favor? Anyone in opposition to? Now, I close the public hearing and bring it back to the board for discussion or a motion. Any discussion? Can I get a motion?
I got a question. You said you raised cattle on there. How many cattle you raised on there?
We don't have any on it yet, I'm just now getting the pastures, up. We don't have any fence up, I gotta get my fence in first. There's about 50 acres over there total that's open, so 30, we won't put no more than 30 on there.
What's it, well, here's my question is, what's the climate on from A1 to A2 on cattle?
That's what I'm looking at. That's right.
Well, if you put too many cattle on there, it can't be A2. You can't have
I
A2.
think it's 1 cattle per acre.
As long as you, the zoning says 1 cow per acre and,
But half of it's hardwoods.
yeah, all that property is not open pasture. Actually, the 50 acres would include part of the other 20 acres that y'all want to talk about.
Can someone look that up real quick for us, please?
Yes, sir.
What that says? Because that's something we definitely need to take into consideration. While they're looking that up,
7.2.1, sir.
okay,
Agricultural uses including forestry, truck gardening, livestock production, general horticulture, but excluding commercial poultry production, hog operations, slaughterhouses, animal waste and goods. All structures housing permitted livestock shall not be located closer than 50 feet from any common property line, that's A2.
I think the only thing that we won't allow you to do in A2 is like feedlots and high density stuff for cattle. I think the A1 and A2, as far as the number of cows per acre, I think it's the same.
Mr. Gandy, what was that, section again?
I think that's 72.1.3.
72.1.3.
7.2.1.
That's all I find as well.
I think there
Okay,
is.
so Mr. Norris, you're agreeing to, prior to our vote here, you're agreeing to whatever the A2 requirements are, that you will
Whatever
live by those.
Yes, whatever limitation is, how many cows per open it is for A2, that's what I'll do.
All right, any other questions for Mr. Norris or anybody, or any discussion here?
Mr. Chairman, I just am looking at animal units, and I do see 1 acre for 1 cow. That is in our animal units in our definitions.
1 acre for 1 cow per, under A2 zoning.
Any zoning that allows them, yes.
Right. Any zoning that allows them, so that will include A2 and A1.
So 1 acre per cow.
So in reality, you can have 72.
Realistically, I couldn't, though, because you put that many cows on there, and you never wind up deep.
I understand, but I'm just.
Yeah,
So you don't-
yeah,
You have how many acres?
72 in that tract.
Oh, okay, yeah.
72 in that tract, but it's not all open land.
No, it's only about 50 acres of it.
We just need to kind of understand before we dive into this thing. All right, any other questions or comments? Or I'll open the floor for a motion to approve conditions or deny.
I'll make a motion to approve it with the condition that he follows the, limit on animals, not to exceed the animal limit on the property.
Can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
We generally discourage, I'm not a member of the board, but we generally discourage conditions that are just follow the law. You know? So.
Okay, I'll rescind that motion.
So motion to approve. Okay.
Darn if you do and darn if you don't.
Sorry.
Motion to approve by Kenneth, second by Bruce. Any discussion? If not, we will vote. Yes.
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 5-0 to approve. Again, my same instructions that we'll have another public hearing on May the 2nd. I do recommend that you attend. And our last one for the evening, I think, is Priscilla Norris.
Priscilla Norris.
Okay.
Do you want me to read that, or?
You can.
Okay, all right. Priscilla B. Norris is requesting to rezone her 20.45 acre property from A1 to A2 to prohibit intensive farming practices on the property. The property is located at 470 Dunedin Drive on map 20, parcel 1D in District 2. And then I've got the note that this is the 4th contiguous parcel of the 4 owned by Mr. Norris and Mrs. Norris and her husband, Billy. Mr. Norris has submitted a rezone application for all 3 of the parcels that they own together, 134, 135, and 136. Mrs. Norris had to submit the separate request because the property was in her name only.
So I'm Priscilla Norris, I live in 470, and when we bought this property last May, the purpose was just to have a small farm. We bought the 72 acres and then the 20 acres with the house, and so the 20 acres with the house is what I would like to have rezoned to A2 to match the usage, because it's A1 right now, but it should really be A2 because that's the usage, and that is really the usage of the whole area. And with the deed restrictions, unless I wanna upset some neighbors and have some neighbor lawsuits, then it's really like an A2 property already.
Okay. Any questions for Ms. Norris? I do have a question as far as the cows that you're, is any of it, any of that, any of the cows gonna be on this 20 point?
That's
Well,
part of it.
half of the 20 acres is woods in my house, So the I don't know if any of you guys drove past, but there's a circular, almost a half moon drive that goes through the two gates. And the lower half of the property, about 10 acres, a little bit more than 10 acres, is a grass area. So if I had any animals there, it couldn't be a lot, because I only have 10 acres there, so it would be less than 10 cows. If I even have cows. The plan is to put in a couple of horses, and that's the plan, so I can look at my backyard and see the horses. But it can't ever be anything major, because I only have 10 acres that's in pasture, the rest is the house and the woods.
Any questions on Ms. Norris? All right, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Again, we will open up the public hearing for anyone that wants to speak for this rezone request. Anyone want to speak in opposition? Not, we will close the public hearing and bring it back to the board for any discussion or any motion. I'll make a motion to approve. Do I get a second? Second by Lee. Any more discussion? If not, William?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes? Yes. 5-0 to approve. Again, this will come before the Board of Commissioners on May the 2nd. I do recommend that you please attend, because there will be questions that I can't answer. Not maybe, but there will be questions that I can't answer, so I need you here to answer those particular questions. All right, anything else, Ms. Patrick?
No, sir, just leave adjourned.
Okay, before we adjourn, I do have one comment for the board. Several of you have called me about the issue or something that we were supposed to consider. We got an email saying that we did not need to consider that. So that email stands as is, we don't need to consider it, so that issue is gone for the moment. Okay? I got a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?